Countless Americans were captivated by Bing Crosby. They were able to make it through the war, the Depression, and the construction of modern America because of his words. People across the nation still listen to his older Christmas songs every December. Hearing that shocking truth might change your perception of one of America's most famous stars forever. Even his own family would be destroyed by the dark truth that the innocent man singing White Christmas was concealing. Suicide took the lives of his two sons. Cancer claimed a third life, living under the enormous shadow of their father. All of them struggled with substance abuse. Why would the children of a famous celebrity ever do such horrible things? What sinister secret could motivate them? What was Bing's last statement that would stay with his children forever? Why would a famous, wealthy, and seemingly limitless opportunity family leave behind something so horrible? We have one of the most heartbreaking family stories in Hollywood to share with you today. Before he became the biggest star in American theater, Harry Lillis Crosby Jr. was just a boy from Tacoma, Washington. A humble family welcomed him into the world in 1903. With 7 children under their care, his mother ran the household while his father worked as a bookkeeper. Becoming the voice of a generation didn't appear likely given his ordinary beginning. However, even the most routine lives experience moments of upheaval. For Harry, it all started with a comic strip in the Bingville Bugle when he was a little boy. He was originally named Bingo by a neighbor, but he soon changed it to Bing, a simple name that would catapult him to stardom. In the summer of 1917, Bing got his start in the entertainment industry as a property boy at Spokane's Playhouse when he was a young man. Famous actors like Al Jolson performed there. Early encounters with these well-known figures in the entertainment industry laid the groundwork for a phenomenal career in American entertainment history. It was at Gonzaga University where Bing displayed a great deal of promise. Whether it was debate, athletics, or public speaking, he excelled. He considered attending law school for a moment before the allure of music drew him in a different direction. His early reputation was marred by his independability and affinity for the carefree jazz-age lifestyle, but he began performing locally when he joined forces with pianist Al Rinker. It was still easy to see Crosby's talent despite these shaky starts. His baritone voice was so inviting and intimate that it seemed as though he was speaking directly to the audience. During that era, the majority of popular singers sung in a more theatrical and presented style, so this was a radical departure. A famous band leader named Paul Whiteman approached Crosby and Rinker in 1926 and asked them to join his group. Whiteman quickly brought guitarist Harry Barris on board. They formed a singing trio called the Rhythm Boys after coming together. Crosby became nationally known as a result of this work. But Crosby would quickly become more famous than his partners thanks to his jazzy rendition of Old Man. In 1928, his single Old Man River reached the top of the charts for the first time. It was a portent of his future as a solo artist. As tensions rose, the Rhythm Boys decided to split up. The opportunity to launch what would become one of the most illustrious solo careers in entertainment history was presented to Crosby by this. Crosby accomplished meteoric rise to stardom in the 1,930th. Just in 1931, he appeared on 10 of the top 50 songs. His debut film role in The Big Broadcast proved he could do more than sing. His hosting gig at NBC's Kraft Music Hall followed shortly thereafter. For 10 years, he would bring his warm personality to homes all over the United States in that capacity. Naturalness of speech in song and on screen was what truly distinguished Crosby. When performing, Bing seemed genuine, in contrast to other artists who go overboard. Modern pop singers like Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley looked up to him as an example of an approachable performer because of this. You can't overstate Crosby's significance to the American spirit in WRY. Yank magazine named him the man who had done the most to inspire American troops overseas. By recording Irving Berlin's White Christmas, he helped make the song a seasonal staple for troops stationed overseas. I can't even begin to fathom how someone could have survived in the modern world without Crosby's infatuation with culture by 1948. He was ranked first in a national poll for admiration in the United States, surpassing even the most revered politicians, war heroes, and even the Pope. More than half of the recorded music played on American radio that year was his songs, according to Music Digest. The art world wasn't the only thing Crosby altered. On a more technical level, he revolutionized the entertainment industry. His ire was aroused because NBC insisted on airing his radio show live. Therefore, he advocated for pre-recorded broadcasts, which ultimately transformed the industry. He funded Ampex, the U.S. company that produced the first commercial tape recorder, and invested in German tape recording technology after WHR. This revolutionary concept revolutionized the creation of music and radio programs by allowing for the editing and improvement of acts. Les Paul and other musicians quickly recognized the creative potential of this new technology. The result was the evolution of now standard recording techniques such as multi-tracking and overdubbing. Bing Crosby appeared to have it all at first look: immense fame, a fortune, creative ideas, and the adoration of millions. Being intelligent yet approachable, prosperous yet grounded, and talented yet humble, he exemplified the ideal great American guy. While his public profile skyrocketed, an entirely different narrative was unfolding behind the scenes. This was the tale that would finally tarnish his memory and bring unfathomable sorrow to his loved ones. It appeared as though Bing's home life was portrayed in the ideal Hollywood style, as his career took off and he became a star. Dixie Lee was his bride in 1930. Her future was bright as she became a famous actress and singer, but as his star began to rise, she became known as Mrs. Bing Crosby and progressively disappeared from public view. They welcomed 4 sons into the world between 1933 and 1938: Lindsay, twin sons, Philip, and Dennis and Gary. Talented, beautiful, and financially fortunate, they were the American dream family, according to most people. Bing and Dixie appeared overjoyed to be parents in magazine spreads featuring the happy couple at their expansive farm, where the boys wore matching outfits. Seasonal films displayed the family gathered harmoniously around the piano, further solidifying Bing's reputation as the epitome of a family man. When the cameras stopped rolling, what transpired next? As soon as the microphones were silenced? When the world-renowned American musician was merely a father to 4 young sons. As a result of listening to Bing's voice, millions of people probably wouldn't have believed what happened in the Crosby home. Because of his intelligence, kindness, and patience, Bing was portrayed as the ideal father figure in films such as Going My Way, for which he received an Oscar for his portrayal of a compassionate priest. The way he actually parented, though, was completely different. Bing maintained an emotionally distant and nearly cruel dictatorship within the confines of their farm. In his private life, Bing was very different from his public persona. According to subsequent reports, despite his friendly demeanor on television and the radio, the man was frequently icy and distant when it came to his own children. Even after reassuring the nation throughout the war, he was unable to console his own sons. A major contributor to the family's problems was Dixie's alcoholism. She was no longer able to shield her children from Bing's severe punishments as her drinking became worse. The strain of being in Bing's shadow and her own declining career took a toll on her health and happiness. At an early age, the Crosby boys were sent to military academies. Just like at home, there were stringent regulations. Once they returned home, they were expected to adhere to stringent regulations and would face severe consequences for any transgressions. According to subsequent narratives, physical punishment was commonplace. It is said that Bing would use a belt on his children for minor infractions, such as leaving a light on or not finishing their food. However, the psychological isolation might have been even more painful than the physical abuse. Bing was notoriously absent and unable to express his feelings of love and support due to his hectic work schedule. Even though he seldom, if ever, showed his approval, he instilled a strong desire for it in his sons. He was emotionally distant from more than just his family. Those closest to Bing in business admitted they never got to know him. Longtime Crosby collaborator Phil Harris once said that, despite their long history of collaboration, Bing remained elusive due to the meticulously constructed mask he wore when interacting with others. There was a great deal of pressure on the Crosby boys. They had to cope with their father's fame wherever they went, on top of living in a rigid and frequently brutal household. They weren't merely a bunch of lads out there trying to make it. People constantly made comparisons between the Crosby. The situation deteriorated after Dixie's 1952 death from ovarian cancer. Her age was a mere 40 years. After she passed away, the boys no longer had the safety net of a mother and were even more susceptible to their father's influence. Everyone in the family felt the devastating loss, but Bing maintained his resolute public image. Catherine Grant, an actress 30 years his junior, became Bing's second wife after only 1 year of marriage. Harry, Mary Frances, and Nathaniel were their subsequent children. Much has been said about how Bing's approach to parenting shifted with his second family. Having grown up with such a different father, his older children found this to be yet another painful difference. Without their famous father, Gary, Dennis, Lindsay, and Philip struggled to establish their individual identities as they entered adulthood. In their own ways, all four of them attempted to emulate Bing's entertainment empire, but none of them were able to match his level of success. What gave them that idea? Their father was a cult. There were benefits and drawbacks to carrying the Crosby name. While it did pave the way for many opportunities, it also set expectations that were nearly impossible to fulfill. Furthermore, the Crosby boys all had hidden mental scars that, as they matured, manifested in increasingly problematic ways. Everything was in place for a family tragedy to unfold slowly, painfully, and ultimately fatally over the course of many years. It must have been incredible to be born into a family where the father was the most famous singer in America. It ought to be possible for you to pass through any door. It ought to be simple to access every opportunity. I think you have what it takes to rule the globe. That much-loved dad returns home to berate you for everything you do wrong, assure you that you will never be worthy of his stellar reputation, and generally ruin your childhood. Gary Evan Crosby believed this to be true. As Bing's first child, he entered the world in 1933 and quickly became famous, performing as a singing sensation on his father's radio show even at an early age. The American public adored these father-son duets, without realizing the immense emotional investment and bravery that went into creating such touching performances. Because he wanted his father's and his own approval, Gary's interest in entertainment grew as he got older. Battles in a considerably more ominous glow. Reporters in the early 1960s heard Bing Crosby admit to being too tough with his children. It was unusual for him to be so forthright and honest. Bing understood the emotional toll that his rigid parenting had taken on his sons as he made this confession, which belied his typically harsh demeanor. The family could have waited, but by then it would have been too late. They had already been altered by years of abandonment and psychological anguish. Regardless, Bing's voice, his renowned performances, and his enormous influence on American society remained inseparable from Crosby's reputation. Unfortunately, His children and future generations would pay a terrible price for his legacy. Bing Crosby will forever be associated with his calming music, but his children will always be remembered for how difficult it was for them to escape their famous father's shadow. The tragic consequences of losing touch with one's emotions and the perils of stardom are themes that run throughout the Crosby family history. While Bing's professional life flourished, his private life collapsed. His children would carry the wounds he inflicted upon them forever, and they would never heal. Bing Crosby's reputation shifted dramatically over the years. He went from being a benevolent patriarch whose music soothed a nation to a man whose family problems ruined his personal life. My heart sinks at the sight of things. The story's most unexpected twist has come at this point. This scene will later provide a fresh, tragic perspective on the entire Crosby family tragedy. When Bing Crosby was very famous and powerful in 1959, he did something that famous people like him almost never do. He felt he had utterly bungled the part that should have meant the world to the man who had been America's ideal father figure, not at work, where things were going swimmingly, but in the position that ought to have meant the world to him. Bing made a shocking confession regarding his parenting style in an interview. He admitted to her that he struggled as a parent. He blamed himself for failing them because he had lavished them with money, discipline, and work without providing the one thing they truly needed: his undivided attention. He acknowledged that both he and their mother had given it our all, but his remarks revealed that he was aware of his failure in the most crucial aspect. Given what transpired subsequent to Bing's 1959 statement, its significance is amplified. Had it been an attempt at peacemaking that had come too late? A light bulb moment when he realized he couldn't use his shortcomings to effect meaningful change? Or was it merely an infrequent imperfection of his public persona that revealed hidden anxieties he seldom acknowledged to himself? Understanding what happened to the Crosby family relies heavily on Bing's statement, regardless of his intention. It was his way of confessing that he had fallen short of his public image as the ideal American father. On October 14, 1977, while enjoying his beloved pastime of golf in Spain, Bing Crosby suffered a heart attack. His age was 73. A lot of people were upset about his passing, and the tributes paid tribute to his impact on American culture and entertainment. Unbeknownst to those in attendance, his passing would mark the beginning of a tragic new chapter in the Crosby family's tragic tale. What happens when one's public persona and their private life are drastically different would be revealed in this fresh narrative, along with the true price of fame.